Peace to the gods. All praise be to the Most High. What's going on, guys? It's your favorite cosmic warrior, back at you with another Galactic Transmission. Today, this rising, we're going to talk about, I'm going to get into, human rights, right? And, his story, the history written, the narrative written, and the narrative spun by, some of the victims, right, of some of the things that have happened around the world. The more I research, the more I'm led to believe that it's a false narrative. And, one thing I've learned is that, mainstream media in the U.S. is good for nothing. Absolutely good for nothing. Propaganda whores. There's no real news that they spread anymore. And especially, nothing that might, shed a bad light upon our greatest allies, our bestest of friends, that are horrible people, that do horrible things, provided with our money and our forces to do their bidding, as well as to turn a blind eye while we continue to support them to get away with their fuckery, their abominations that no living God chose them for. I had this one on the bottom of my list, but we're going to start with this one. I put together a collage of videos, different narratives, different perspectives from everywhere but the mainstream media. So that's where the truth is. The truth is not in the mainstream. The lies, the deceit, the false narratives, but there's always some truth hidden in all the lies. Well, the best lies are, a decent amount of truth with an equal amount of lies, right? But the facts, the facts are altered, roles are reversed and switched, narratives are spun completely opposite. Well, let's get into this real quick. Oh, not that one.
Sorry to say that your mass media, the Western mass media, always decide these rights. Your baby in this area. And you are forgetting completely this organized terrorism. Even in the United Nations, the Security Council, you refused to condemn this barbarian attack on the South, but you blessed it. And you said that we accept the raid, but it was a little bit more than required. I have to ask those who used to speak about human rights. Where is this human rights there in the South? Did you see the picture there? Our camps, some of these villages have been smashed, civilian warriors, because it is your baby. Israel. Sorry to say that your mass media.
The atrocities that are done with the U.S. funds, with United States taxpayers' funds, against, with us having no knowledge of to where our money's going, what our money's supporting, and the suppression of that. It's not just the lack of information, it's the straight suppression of the truth. That's why the rage inside of me is fueled, the suppression of it. It's not from lack of, because there's lack of it, but it gets silenced. Freedom of speech? Where? Not in the United States of Israel. I want to play a video of Gaddafi, right? I've talked a little bit. I played that video about the general in Africa, right? And I was the president, but Gaddafi, good man, right? Great man, and this is an interview that happened when he he came to the U.S. And this is an interview that happened during then. Where is it? Here we go.
Against the part. Move on to our next questioner at the microphone over there. Mr. Welcome to America, Mr. Mandela. I'm Ken Edelman. Those of us who share your struggle for human rights and against apartheid have been somewhat disappointed by the models of human rights that you have held up since being released in jail. You've met over the last 6 months 3 times with Yasser Arafat, who you have praised. You have told Gaddafi that you share the view and applaud him on his record of human rights and his drive for freedom and peace around the world. And you have praised Fidel Castro as a leader of human rights and said that Cuba was one of the countries that's head and shoulders above all other countries in human rights, despite the fact that documents of the United Nations and elsewhere show that Cuba is one of the worst. I was just wondering, are these your models of leaders of human rights? And if so, would you want a Gaddafi or an Arafat or a Castro to be a future president of South Africa?
One of the mistakes which some political analysts make is to think that their enemies should be our enemies.
Did you catch that? One of the biggest mistakes that we make is thinking that our enemies wow, I don't want to butcher that. What was it? Our enemies should be our enemies. Well, who are our enemies? Who do we wage war against, and why? You know, for what reason? One of the biggest reasons we should ask ourselves, what resources do they have? Who's leading their country? If the person leading their country is leading them towards sovereignty, leading them towards freedom, if the leader of their country is doing things that benefit them, chances are there's outside forces that are trying to overthrow that, and they're trying to suck them dry of their resources. That's just the facts, proven over time. It's a playbook. Have you studied it? Do you know it? They don't alter from it very far. You know, but our enemies, you know, we welcome people into our country. We support terrorists. I thought we don't negotiate with terrorists. Oh, that's right. We supply them with arms. You know, I want to, so he was talking about people from all over, right? And, you know, Venezuela, you know, you look at what's happening in Venezuela right now. We're attacking, you know, we're blowing up ships and this and that, right? Drug smugglers, which maybe they are, maybe they aren't, you know. But let me tell you one thing I do know. If you want to fight the war on drugs, you don't actually fight it like that. The war on drugs, it's not a war on drugs. It's a war on control. You know, you want to end the war on drugs, you take away the money. You shut down the banking systems that support them. Don't we know to trace the money? Don't we understand that? We know that, right? Me. Without certifications or degrees. I know that, but our experts don't. Our leaders don't. Wow, they sound really, really educated to me. The war on drugs doesn't fight drugs. The war on drugs, it fuels the system. Come on, fools. You still buy into that false system, that war on drugs, the Reagan era? You're still buying into those lies, the deceit? We're still buying into that? We're still thinking that we're winning the war? Right. Keep telling yourself that. But Chavez, Hugo Chavez, another human rights activist, a wonderful man. But I'm going to play this video real quick, just showing who he is and how he came up, right? So Chavez, he was loved by his people, loved by them, you know, and he remained their president until he passed in what was it, 2013, I believe. But now we're gonna get into we're gonna listen to some of the words that he speaks. Okay.
Because of my curly hair. And I'm so proud to have this mouth and this hair because it's African. When we were children, we were told that we have a motherland. And that motherland was Spain. However, we have discovered later in our lives that as a matter of fact, we have several motherlands. And one of the greatest motherlands of all is no doubt Africa. We love Africa. And every day we are much more aware of the roots we have in Africa. Also, America is our motherland. Africa, America, and Bolivar used to say that we are a new human race in Latin America. That we are not Europeans, nor Africans, or North Americans. That we are a mixture of all those races. And there is no doubt that Africa resounds with a pulse like 1,000 drums, and happiness and joy. But also there's a lot of pain when you think of Africa. Yesterday I met with the president of Mozambique because fully aware of these roots and these realities, we have designed an agenda for Africa in Venezuela. And we have spoken to other South American leaders. Lula, for instance, is fully aware of the African roots of Brazil and South America. And I want to share the African agenda with other leaders in South America. But Venezuela has also its own African agenda. In the case of Mozambique, the life expectancy in Mozambique is 38 years old and going down because AIDS is causing havoc in the population. It's terrible. It's a tragedy. It's 1 million Katrinas hitting this country. The president of Mozambique told me the number of children, orphan children, whose parents have died as a result of AIDS. The teachers are dying. The doctors are dying. That's a tragedy. And it's a disgrace. And that's why it hurts. It hurts so much to see the UN opening its doors to listen to speeches and more speeches, while at the same time, every year, a population equivalent
a lo que hoy es Argentina,
to Argentina today,
o Colombia,
or Colombia die of hunger,
o Venezuela.
or Venezuela die of hunger.
Muertes que se pueden evitar.
And those deaths could be avoided.
Y la mayor proporción son niños,
Most of them are children,
son niñas.
little girls, little
La mayor
boys,
cantidad está en África.
and most of them are in Africa.
Así que el compromiso
So
se requiere un sacudimiento
we
espiritual en el mundo.
need like a shaking of the world,
De allí
to shake up the world.
de allí quizá lo que algunos llaman mi estilo.
That's why when people talk about my style, that's why the speech I delivered yesterday before the United Nations Assembly, because it doesn't work. It's not working. If we reduced the military expenses in 10% of the world, we would have enough money to save millions of lives in this world.
Nosotros en Venezuela,
In Venezuela,
con escasos recursos,
with the little resources,
hemos
few
ayudado
resources,
planes de alimentación
we have initiated a program to bring food
para los sectores populares
to feed the poor people in Venezuela.
y estamos abarcando
And we are covering
15
today
millones de personas.
15 million people in Venezuela
El sistema de distribución de alimentos,
receiving this food distribution and
una
assistance.
porción importante lo recibe gratuitamente.
And most of them receive this food for free,
Otra proporción son
and others a
el
percentage.
50% de lo que cuestan los
They
alimentos.
have to pay only 50% of the total amount for the food they eat.
Claro, pero eso solo se logra con
And of course, this is possible only if the people themselves participate and with a new awareness.
el racismo es propio.
Racism is very characteristic of imperialism.
El racismo es propio de
Racism is very characteristic of capitalism.
Lo de Katrina es mucho de racismo.
Katrina has a lot to do with racism, no doubt about it.
El odio contra mí es mucho de racismo.
Hate against me has a lot to do with racism.
Por
Because of my big mouth,
mi cabello.
because of my...
Now, one thing that really stands out to me, he talks about shaking things up, right? How everything needs a huge shakeup, right? And instantly my mind goes to Trump, right? Some of the things he does, I definitely don't agree with, you know, but for the most part, I know what he's doing, and much needed. And so he's doing the proper shakeup in some ways, right? In some ways. Other ways, I definitely do not agree or stand with his choices and decisions at all, right? Interesting too, though. He talks about Africa and AIDS, and it talks about the orphans. And I'm being reminded of another amazing self-appointed humanitarian who was in Africa, you know, and their foundation, you know, the Gates Foundation, you know, does nothing but help the children. You know, a man that, you know, was never once on the Epstein flight logs, of course not. Never went to that island, because this man loves the children and cares about the children so much. He wants to be all up in their life. And this man, this wonderful humanitarian, I watch him sit down and break bread with our president. The same president that breaks bread with serpents, snakes, terrorists. That makes no fucking sense to me. None. You know, but we're gonna get into his speech. You know, he brought up, you know, different nations, and this next video goes into I believe this next one is a speech that happened in the UN that Chavez gave to the UN. No, not that one. There we go.
I think that the first people who should read this book.
How do I? Oh, it's not any better. Okay.
I think that the first people who should read this book are our brothers and sisters in the United States, because their threat is in their own house. The devil is right at home. The devil himself is right in the house. And the devil came here yesterday. Yesterday, the devil came here. Right here. Right here. And it smells of sulfur still today. This table that I am now standing in front of. Yesterday, ladies and gentlemen, from this rostrum, the President of the United States, the gentleman to whom I refer as the devil, came here talking as if he owned the world. Truly, as the owner of the world. I think we could call a psychiatrist to analyze yesterday's statement made by the President of the United States. As the spokesman of imperialism, he came to share his nostrums to try to preserve the current pattern of domination, exploitation, and pillage of the peoples of the world. An Alfred Hitchcock movie could use it as a scenario. I would even propose a title: The Devil's Recipe. As Chomsky says here, clearly and in depth, the American empire is doing all it can to consolidate its hegemonistic system of domination, and we cannot allow them to do that. We cannot allow world dictatorship to be consolidated.
You know, that's really weird. He's calling our former president the devil. Bush Jr., the devil. Why would he provide such accusations? Why would he do such a thing? You know, the narrative around the Holocaust, right? The narrative around that war. Well, Bush, let's look at his father. You know, what did his father do? What was his father involved with? Well, his father, when we were bombing over there, our bombers were the pilots of the bombers were given clear instructions not to bomb certain facilities. And what facilities were those? Those are manufacturing facilities where they took the planes that the U.S. provided for them. They took, I think it was Boeing. I could be wrong, but I think it was Boeing. And they stripped down the Boeing planes. They shipped them somewhere else to a neutral country. And then from that neutral country, it then went to them. And then they went and they fitted them to make bombers out of them. And that's what was happening in these factories. In these factories that our pilots were instructed not to touch. And who owns them? Oh, that's right. It was Bush Sr. That's right. That's right. And then Henry Ford. Another one that helped them out. But they were bad people, right? The Nazis were bad people, horrible people. Hitler was horrible, right? Such a bad freaking guy. Says who, though? Whose narrative? Killed all these people. Well, okay. We have that beat into us. 6 million, 6 million, 6 million. Where do those numbers come from? Oh, that's right. It was a dream. They were fabricated in a dream because they never fucking happened. That's right. But hey, if we all had the same false dream, it must be true, right?
Because of
You know, our enemies aren't our real enemies. That's just what we're taught to think, who we're taught to dislike, who we're taught for certain narratives, so that we go and fight those people. And for why? For who is the real question. Never for us. Never for the real God. For someone else. For false gods, dead gods, many other reasons. But never for the reason they state. Ever. You know, there's a reason why they don't translate. You know, if he was such a horrible man, he had lots of speeches, right? He was going around speeching everywhere. He was such a horrible man, right? That's why they had the American Nazi movement, right? The whole party. There's a whole party of them, right? Why if he was such a bad man, spread so much hate, why was his speeches never translated into English so that we could know the words of this evil man? Don't we have the right to know of why we're supposed to dislike him, why we're supposed to hate him? Don't we deserve the right to know about why he's a bad man, other than just because we told you to believe that? Well, we know how that goes, don't we? It's like we got friends where our friend did some fuck shit, fuck someone else over, and then, oh, we don't like them, we're not gonna be friends with them. Well, why not? You ironically forget to leave out all the parts that you did. Oh, come on. That small things happen on a bigger scale, a grander scale. It's no different. If you can notice it small, it's easier to notice it big on the grander scheme. That's all it is. Schemes, lies, deceit, scheming. But let's watch this.
Occupied not by German troops, but is obvious.
This is him talking about Gaza or Palestine, well, both, right?
He escaped Mr. Roosevelt's notice that Palestine is at present occupied not by German troops, but by the English, and that the country is undergoing restriction of its liberty by the most brutal resort to force, is being robbed of its independence, and is suffering the cruelest maltreatment for the benefit of Jewish interlopers. The Arabs living in that country would therefore certainly not have complained to Mr. Roosevelt of German aggression, but they are voicing a constant appeal to the world, deploring the barbarous methods with which England is attempting to suppress a people which loves its freedom and is merely defending it. This, too, is perhaps a problem which in the American president's view should be solved at the conference table, that is before a just judge, and not by physical force or military methods, by mass executions, burning down villages, blowing up houses, and so on. For one fact is surely certain. In this case, England is not defending herself against a threatened Arab attack, but as an uninvited interloper is endeavoring to establish her power in a foreign territory which does not belong to her.
Well, it goes into the actual speech, right? Without the translation. It's just written. But that's really interesting. You know, a foreign power coming over trying to take control. Infiltrating. Interesting. What's going on in the U.S. right now? United States of Israel. Liars. Deceivers. False allegiance. Not to who the oath was taken. To the Constitution. The Constitution of what? The Constitution of to who? Representing who? What people? God's chosen people? Self-appointed Netanyahus? Or the living God? Then we got the takeover coming in from the Muslims now as well. Which you go back and the Muslims were started by the Jews. Until they got out of control. They couldn't contain them, couldn't control them. Kind of ironic. Well, look at Al-Qaeda. We trained them. We provided them with arms. Then we can't control them. Oh, that's funny. If only we knew how history repeats itself. If only we knew how to study the past so we can understand what's happening now. If only we knew how to understand the past so we can understand what's going to happen in the future. If only. If only we were given true information and true knowledge so we could make up our own mind instead of being lied to, instead of being force-fed propaganda, force-fed lies by the propaganda whores. If only. If only we had true freedom of speech. If only. Let's take a look at Gaza in 1989.
Prison camp in the Gaza Strip. This camp, surrounded by barbed wire and armed guards, is one of nearly a dozen such camps now holding 5,000 Palestinians. Doctors, lawyers, children from the refugee camps, students, labor leaders, human rights activists, journalists, most are being held without charge or trial, some for months on end, labeled simply as security offenders. all that is necessary under current administrative Israeli law to detain them for months on end. You're here at the detention center to visit your son, is that correct? What happened to him?
They took him from the house at 2 a.m. in the morning. And they accuse him of throwing the stones, and they are fining him something like $700.
And how long have they kept him yet in the detention center?
They sentenced him for 5 months in jail and $700 fine.
They sentenced him for 5 months in jail, $700 fine, and he's 16 years old, and it was for throwing stones.
Yeah.
Is that right? Are the other children afraid as a result of what's happened to it, or are they continuing the work of the intifada?
اللي زيه خايفين من
خايفين طبعا من كل خايف
They are afraid, and everybody is afraid of being
لو يطلع كمان بنفس الوقت هذا البلد ما كان يجوا يدوروا على البلد هذا البلد.
They have been looking for this boy. They came twice to locate him.
Why? What did they think he had done?
They think that he is throwing stones.
And so they want to arrest him?
Yeah, they have looked for him for twice.
They would put him in jail? As small as he is? Small boys this age are in jail?
All these boys.
All these boys?
All these boys.
انت بتشتغلي؟ How are we supposed to feel when we see our children beaten by the... Sometimes we are asleep and all of a sudden we see soldiers jumping over the walls to the house. And they destroy the belongings in the house.
The jails are not only filled with these young boys, but also the intellectuals, the educated and affluent Palestinians now flooding the prisons.
You know, it talks about, locking a lot of kids up, right? And the irony of how, you all saw all the videos of the settlers that are on Palestinian land, right? The settlers it's an invasion, right? And what do? They harass them. The military comes in, steals their livelihood, right? Destroys everything, kicks them out legalized terrorism, kicks them out of their own houses, right? And they can say nothing. Saying nothing. It's a good thing. It's a good thing they're all about accountability, right? It's a good thing that, when people are caught on camera doing wrong under their colors, under their flag, it's a good thing they hold them accountable. And they're all about justice, and the perpetrators will be held to justice. And so, when that video that surfaced, with the detainee, right? And what did they do? It's a good thing, their investigation, as soon as the video got released of what they did, they were so concerned about justice being served that the first people that they went after were the ones that turned in the video, the ones that posted the video, the ones that showed the world what they're actually doing. Oh, yeah, let's go after those people. But the ones doing it, oh, no, well, no, everyone's treated humanely in their camps. Everyone's treated humanely, right? Because, God would never condone anything but, right? From God's chosen people, you would expect nothing less from God's chosen people, right? Oh, of course not. When they were gathering around with the riot shields, shielding from the camera, it's, they must have just been checking for a hemorrhoid, helping with the hemorrhoid. But they wanted to block it from the camera view so they could protect his decency, right? That must have been what they were doing, right? Because they're honorable, God-fearing men, right? Right? You know, I'm gonna get back onto hopping around a little bit. You know, let's talk about, you know, they're so quick to bring up the atrocities that were done to them at Auschwitz and everywhere else, right? The atrocities. You know, everyone knows it. 6 million, 6 million, 6 million. You know it, right? 6 million. Where? Oh, well, right, 6 million. If we just take the list and we multiply it and we repeat the same number, the same names, but a different, you know, order, we can get 6 million, right? We know that system through the voting system, right? Dead people equal 5 votes, right? We know that, right? We know how that works, right?
True, because there is not the slightest evidence that Adolf Hitler knew whatever was happening about the Jews, about the Holocaust, about Auschwitz. I've offered again and again £1,000 English money, 2,000 Canadian dollars, to any historian or private person or institute. I made this offer in 1977. I've made it ever since over the last 9 years. In television programs, the media, all the way around the world. £1,000 to anybody who can find one wartime document showing that Adolf Hitler even knew about Auschwitz or about whatever was going on the Eastern Front in that particular historical region. And they can't find it, and they huff and they puff, and they all look at each other, all these academic historians, and they say, Jekyll, you've got the proof somewhere, haven't you? Jekyll says, no, I haven't got it. Hillgruber has it. And Hillgruber says, no, I haven't got it. Jacobson has it. Jacobson says, but I quoted Brochard, and Brochard says, but I thought you had it, Jekyll. And so they go round and round. They all thought that the other person had the evidence, and because they can't prove that they've got the evidence, they all round on me and say, Irving is a fascist, don't believe him, he's discredited. Nobody accepts what he's got. Well, I've come up in the archives with a whole string of documents, which goes even further than this. Genuine documents that meet my criteria, genuine documents written by people in the position to know, documents that have been created not for some exterior or ulterior motive. Genuine documents, a string of documents, a narrow file of documents showing Hitler deliberately, explicitly linked to the Holocaust, as we can say, or linked to the fate of the Jews, that great tragedy. And all these documents show Hitler intervening, trying to stop anything nasty happening to the Jews. Even this turns out...
The proof that the Jews use to back up their claims for their narrative of what happened, there is none. Absolutely zero fucking proof. Were there some people died from it? Yes. But not nearly to the extent that they say, and not anywhere near to how they say it happened. There's no proof to back up any way that they say it happened. Their narrative does not work. Their narrative crumbles because it has no proof. Yet all the proof stating otherwise, any proof contradicting their false narrative gets suppressed, labeled as misinformation. The people that speak it get that Clinton special. That's all the proof that I need. There's no real proof. Fool. Only a fool will believe a narrative with nothing to back it up other than another man's word. Another man. Another liar. Another deceiver. Another servant of evil. Another serpent. Let's see, hop around too much. Well, now we're back on Chavez, right? Now we're back on to Chavez. And he goes into about Gaza. Come on. Oh. All right, so I'm gonna have to read this one, okay? The plan they have is to trash Gaza. Even 2 years ago, we saw some images. The government of Israel said they would take out Jewish settlers in Gaza to facilitate the Palestinian government. Liars. They lied. It was to take out their own people and to obtain freedom for themselves. While Jews were inside Gaza, they couldn't destroy as they are doing now. Bombarding innocent people discriminately. It would have been difficult for them to kill their own people. Now they have their hands free, and unfortunately, it is a horrible thing. This stage is the final one, the last attack to finish Gaza and destroy more than 1.5 million Palestinians who have been blocked by the Israelis. A blockade on the Red Cross where medicine, food, nothing is allowed to pass into Gaza. And the world does absolutely nothing. Not Venezuela. Venezuela rises as a nation who wants peace for the Palestinians, respect for Palestinians. We will see if the new government of the United States will come with a new vision of the world. We will see on January 20th, on Obama's inauguration. We'll see if it's true that President Obama is going to finish the war in Iraq. And if he will start taking away the unconditional support that the imperialist government, which has allowed Israel to attack, kill, murder, and ignore UN resolutions. It is imperialist madness. Israel finally has become the killing arm of American imperialism. Here in Latin America, they tried to create an Israeli state. It will never happen here. An imperialist killing arm to assault the Latin American people. Every day, Latin America will be more united and more free. I hope someday Arabs will be the same way, united. United or dominated, you decide. This is what the video looks if you want to look it up. But united or divided, you decide. United we stand, divided we fall. United we should stand on what is right. Not what they tell us to believe, not what they tell us to feel, what we know inside to be right. A false sense of allegiance to who? Our best friends? How? How? I've had many best friends like them. Pieces of shit. Horrible best friends. Leading me to destruction. Tagging me along for their fuckery. Always going around having to clean up their fucking messes. Having their actions reflect upon me. I know those type of people. I choose not to surround myself with those type of people. Yet we have people leading our country that fully support them. Before us.
What has happened in Gaza. The most unique aspect of what has happened in Gaza is that people, the Palestinians in Gaza, have no means of escape. In every other conflict in decades, and probably in my lifetime, so that's almost 75 years, there has been the capacity for people to get away. We saw in the first months of the Ukraine war that I think it was 6 or 7 million Ukrainians left Ukraine, went to Poland and Germany and Western Europe. Today, I was making the comment earlier that the situation in Sudan is the only situation that can come even close to the horror of Gaza. And the people in Sudan, though, have got borders that they can cross to escape from the killing and the starvation. The people in Gaza are captured. They can't go anywhere. The Israeli authorities, since the first day, have been pursuing an operation of total destruction. And the fact that you've got 2 million people squeezed into an area half the size of Canberra who cannot get away from saturation bombing, starvation, denial of medicines and medical equipment, access to hospitals, access to schools for their kids, makes this unique. The most unique...
You know, and something that stood out from the video before is just, it's just the world. The world has stood by silently. For how many decades allowing this to happen? How many decades? You know, finally we see people standing up, and other countries' governments, not our own, not my own. That's sad. That hurts. That makes me mad. Finally, people are starting to stand up. You know, the Most High demands our silence be broken. All it takes for evil to survive is for good men to do nothing. Good men and women to do nothing. Oh, what am I going to do? You're going to speak your truth? You can do that. That's the least we can do, is speak our truth. Speak the truth. It is commanded of us. This next video is doctors that arrived into Gaza. I think it was shortly before the all the ships with aid before they came. I believe these are Australian doctors that arrived there in Gaza.
Mass casualty after mass casualty. They're using all the weapons. However, when we came north to Al-Shifa Hospital, it's a nightmare. It is a nightmare. We're doing this video because we know that we might die at any time, unfortunately. The number of patients and the number of dead bodies arriving are ridiculous. So we're just basically people dead. We have more than 1,500 people still dead under the rubble in the hospital. Today they bombed just in front of the main entrance of the hospital. 2 days ago they did the same. The issue is we leave our accommodation is an outside walking distance. So we could be at any time at that side of the bomb as an international. We're not even being, we've been told we'll be given an evacuation order. No even evacuation order as international people. I had a beheaded lady who's 9 months pregnant that we had to deliver her by an emergency C-section in the emergency room.
Hi, I'm Dr. Aziz. I'm an anaesthetist who works in Australia, and essentially I'm in a state of shock. We're in Al-Shifa Hospital. We've been here a week. It took us 2 attempts to try and get up to the north to come to Al-Shifa, and we thought it was devastating in Shuhada Al-Aqsa Hospital, where we spent a couple of days, and we come to Al-Shifa, and it is catastrophic. It's cataclysmic. I can't even begin to explain how horrific the situation is. It's a miracle that we're getting anything done.
You know, targeting of women and children, targeting of hospitals, the blatant violations of the Geneva Convention. Blatant. This is a call to all nations involved in the United Nations. Do your fucking job or dissolve. What the fuck is the point? Oh, we condemn them with our words. Yeah, we support them with everything else. So, talked about, falsification of numbers, right? Everyone, 6 million, 6 million, 6 million. I was watching earlier, I was watching an interesting, it's an hour-long video, hopefully I saved it so I could post it. But it's an hour-long video of someone that's done the research, that's been to the, Auschwitz, been to these places. As I said, there's no proof, no claims that Hitler even knew about Auschwitz or what was happening at the most atrocious place, right? Unaware. Well, how is the leader of this horrible army, how is he unaware of what's happening in his own ranks to that extent? Make it make sense. Make the narrative make sense. There's no proof to back up their narrative. None, other than a man's word. Liars' words. Deceivers' words. Look, whose words are we taking? The words of the people that were getting kicked out? Why were they getting kicked out? Because they were trying to enslave them through financial reasons. They were perverting the society with pornography, with gays, with transients. Well, what do you mean? The same shit that's happening to us right now. Open your eyes.
Now she said if I could make a point, now she said the fact that 6 million Jews died. However, in 1988, the site at Auschwitz where people can go and tour the gas chambers, they lowered their figure from 4 million dead to 1 million dead. So that was 3 million taken out of the equation overnight. Where did these 3 million go? Were they never there in the first place? Were they in the camps and did they survive? And if you can lose 3 million people overnight, who's to say that 1 million remaining figure is not also wrong?
And let me ask you this question. Weren't some of these figures ascertained after the fact because they went back and did censuses after?
The source of the famous 6 million figure is an affidavit by by somebody who was brought in at the Nuremberg trial in 1945-46. Even Raoul Hilberg, who's considered one of the major figures in the Holocaust historians, professor at the University of Vermont, he concedes himself that the 6 million figure is based upon crude calculations. It is only highly dubious, and he says we must re-examine this whole question of the 6 million. Look, it's very interesting, Montel. People have heard over and over about 6 million Jews dying in Europe during the Second World War. How many people in this audience know how many Germans died during the Second World War? How many Americans died during the Second World War? How many Chinese died during the Second World War? In America, as time goes by, the more time passes, the more there's emphasis on the fate of one particular people during the Second World War, almost to the exclusion of everyone else. How many...
I'm not sure who that man is in there. But the video says that both men disappeared after that. No doubt by the God-loving and God-fearing men of Israel. With no doubt.
The most sensational...
Agreed with an Israeli request to stop the distribution of a book that contains some pretty damning information about the Israeli Secret Service, the Mossad, if it is true. Here's ABC's John Martin.
The most sensational claim in the book involves this bloody day, the Beirut Marine Barracks bombing. The book says Israeli agents kept vital information from U.S. Marines that might have saved the lives of 241 Americans killed here. Israeli government sources deny this account, but according to the book, an Israeli informant saw a Mercedes truck being fitted with secret panels for explosives. Israeli troops were told to be on the lookout for the truck. But the book says the Israelis intentionally gave the Americans only a vague warning, not mentioning the kind or size of vehicle. The book says Israeli intelligence was willing to let the terrorists succeed to protect their sources and out of contempt for U.S. intelligence. It says agents withheld information on U.S. hostages for similar reasons. In Toronto today, the author was under a court-ordered gag not to discuss the book or the case.
You see, there's two restrictions. There's one restriction that I can't talk about what I learned or have done in the Mossad, and the other restriction is I cannot talk about anything that's in the book.
Israeli officials confirm that Viktor Ostrovsky worked for the Mossad in the 1980s. Alarmed by the contents of the book, they got it temporarily blocked in Canada and the United States.
It's the position of the Israeli government that the information contained in the book could very well lead to the identification of employees of the Mossad and could jeopardize their lives
But the book's introduction says it does not name active agents and gives only initials. It does say that more than 24 senior Israeli agents routinely gather intelligence in the United States. Late today, the book was put out for sale in New York after the court lifted its restraining order. The publishers claimed victory, but the Israeli embassy said it will still pursue its action against the author. John Martin, ABC News, Washington.
Oh, can't leave that out.
למה? ולמה אני לא בכלא? מה לא גיליתי?
שהרבצת לערבים.
אבל אתה מגלה?
לא.
אסור לגלות, נכון?
כי אני קטן.
אתה קטן? אתה הרבצת לערבים?
לא.
כשתהיה גדול מה יקרה? אתה תבוא איתי? לאיפה תבוא איתי? מה תעשה איתי?
להרביץ לערבים.
כן?
Agreed with an Israeli request to stop the distribution of a book that contains...
You know, it's really interesting point. You know, our greatest ally, our bestest of friends, our besties were so kind to give us all the information that they had that could prevent an attack upon the U.S., that could prevent United States lives, American lives. It's amazing that we have such great friends that care about us so much, that love us so much, that would do anything for us, especially in return for everything that we do for them. The only thing they do for us is their intelligence, right? And they give us everything that they know, especially if it jeopardizes the lives of Americans. Of course they do, because they love us. We're their best friends. They care about us. You know, it's interesting too. Chavez, calls Bush the devil, right? 9/11, Bush sitting down with children, reading a book about planes. Oh, interesting. Symbolism, the narrative, the laugh in our face, the slap in our face, the running joke on us. And we'll see what else was happened. Well, let's talk about the group of Israelis that were held up. They got picked up by the FBI because they were outside with binoculars as if they had prior knowledge of something that was going to happen, and they watched the plane crash into the World Trade Center. And they sat there in the parking lot cheering and celebrating. And then the lady that called them in and reported them, they got held up. But whatever happened to it? Oh, that's right, nothing. They just got released. Because we're best friends, and we just let our friends go. Because we care about them. We care about their safety more than we do about our own people. Disgusting, despicable, abominations. That's got to be one of the only real pieces of information ABC has ever fucking done. Oh yeah, let's look at what they do when they occupy the land, right? When they take over the land. They just destroy it, right? Look at this bulldozer. Look at this shit. They're spraying fuel in there. They have it fabricated so it's filled with fuel tanks that shoot out. And then they got a flamethrower. See? This is what they're doing. Where's that in war? Where's that? Treating people like that. Where's that in war? Starving them. All the violations of the Geneva Convention. They're just thoughtful words. They're cute. They look cute on paper. But when it comes down to implementing them, oh no. Oh, ooh, whoa. I mean, when I said I agreed to that, I didn't mean I'm willing to do what's necessary to uphold my end of it. Especially not because, no one's been paying into it. The U.S. has been paying everyone's fucking debts. U.S. taxpayers been paying in for every other nation that's not pulling their own fucking weight. Pull your fucking weight now. Do your fucking jobs. Because God knows my government's not going to fucking do it.
The day before 9/11, the U.S. Army released an intelligence report that said that the Zionists were pros at carrying out terrorist acts that made it appear that it was done by Arabs. Wake up, Americans. You're about to be pulled into a war with Arabs, with the Muslim world, and you're going to be made to believe that something horrible that happened to you was done by the Muslims. But it wasn't done by the Muslims. It was done by a wild card, the Israeli Mossad, that's cunning and ruthless and can carry out attacks on Americans and make it look like Arabs did it. That's not my conspiracy theory. That's a U.S. Army report.
The day before, published the day before 9/11.
You can call me any name you want to call me. That's a U.S. Army report. They warned us. They were telling us what Israel is capable of doing. The government, American society had not yet been conquered by the Zionists up to September 11th. This country fell to Zionism on September 11, 2001. How did America fall so quickly and become Israeli-occupied territory? Because that's what we are. The United States of America is Israeli-occupied territory, the entire country. They took over the Congress, they took over the White House, they took over the Pentagon, they took over the CIA, they took over the Defense Intelligence Agency, they took over everything. They took over the American evangelical churches, they took over the news media, they took over cable television, they took over the whole country since 2001. How? How did they do it? Jeffrey Epstein. It's just that simple.
Just that simple. You know, sold out by our own president. Sold out by our own congressmen and women. Sold out. All these people that go and kiss the wall. Kissing the wall. Kissing the ring. Bending the knee to false gods. To dead gods. But we're a Christian nation, right? The fuck? Don't act like it. Don't look like it. Where? In God, which gods are you trusting in? Gold, oil, drugs? Those aren't living gods.
If I ever get to spy with when their public relations are at the worst. Why, when their public relations are at the worst ebb in human history, Rabbi, would Israel do this?
But hopefully Israel doesn't base its policy upon what anyone in Cleveland thinks. Hopefully Israel bases policy upon what is good for Israel. Last week, terrorists from Lebanon attacked Jews and killed 2 soldiers. They have to pay for that. This is not Auschwitz. Those days are over. You kill Jews, you pay 2 eyes for an eye. They went into Lebanon because in Lebanon, all of those towns give full and open support to terrorists. To me, this only proves the tragedy of 1982. When Israel went into Lebanon in real force, they had an opportunity to physically exterminate Arafat, the PLO, and right in the middle, right on the verge of an enormous victory, they backed away because of fear of what the world was saying. It was a terrible mistake. We're paying for it now. We should have gone in, scorched that earth, and teach people that if you kill, you get killed.
Let us go back to a story yesterday. I mean, we could rehash the West Bank and the Gaza till hell freezes over, and you know that. Why, when their public relations are at the worst ebb in human history, Rabbi, would it...
You know, if we take anything from our allies and our greatest friend, let's take that mentality. You know why I support American first? Let's do what's good for Americans. Americans. Not Israel. Not anywhere else. Let's take care of America. Let's do America's bidding. And right now, America's bidding should be cutting off the head of that motherfucking snake. if we take anything, any advice, any mentality from them, it should be that. To put us first. Just as every other nation, like he states, I hope that we're not basing our policies upon what other people think, upon what other people do. Then why the fuck does everything that we do have to include Israel? Make that make fucking sense. It doesn't. It makes no fucking sense at all. None. Only to an idiot. What is this one?
Said that the first casualty of war is the truth. But the attack on the truth by
You know, they talk about the extermination camps, right? They talk about the extermination camps and the gas chambers, right? But they don't talk about the walls that were taken down, how there were multiple walls, so there were multiple rooms with bathrooms and this and that. They weren't all shower execution rooms, right? They weren't. And look at, what were they? Sanitation rooms. You look at you look at videos that's going to pop up in the beginning of here, though. It's them coming off the ships. But what they don't show is when they got off the ships to Palestine, they had to all get sanitized. So they couldn't come into the country and bring anything into the country that's going to harm them. That's protocol. That's what happened. That's what those chambers were. But I'm gonna end it with this.
He came across the water with their pale and greedy hands, calling us the savages while stealing all our lands. Said we needed saving from our heathen backward ways, while they burned our sacred places and destroyed our peaceful days. But if sad is their word for those who fight to stay alive, then I'll embrace that title and make sure their greed won't thrive. Listen to the wind, it carries ancient power. Listen to the storm that's building by the hour.
You know, free Palestine. God bless the United States of America. Stay vigilant, my friends.